Good morning. So my name's Jari Moate, and I work for a firm called Resonance, and the name has cropped up once or twice already, and I should probably explain what that is, apart from sounding a bit like a team off The Apprentice. I don't know. I didn't invent anyway. So we are what's called a social finance intermediary. We're an organisation that assists social enterprises and charities to raise investment money that they need in order to scale their projects and to become really kind of viable trading organisations in some cases, but mostly really to sort of pick up people's aspirations for sort of 5 to 10 years into the future and say, okay, what sort of shaped money would be the right shaped money for this aspiration? So I work very, very closely with what we call ventures, which I think most of you would probably be a venture. This is the social enterprises or groups who come together. Sometimes are very, very big charities and very well-known names in this country. Otherwise, they can be complete unknowns to anyone outside of their own niche or circuit. And those ventures are people that I would work with, organisations I would work with, and provide a form of business planning kind of consultancy, I guess, at that stage. The other half of Resonance organises and creates something called funds. And these are investment vehicles that collate money, pool money together from outside investors and direct that money at solving some of the social issues that we see around us. And we're at the moment working on a national homelessness property fund, if I get the working title right, anyway, NHPF. National Homelessness Property Fund, which Bristol City Council has just invested £5 million into, which I'm very pleased about. So those are the sort of things that I get up to. As I said, I'm on the ventures side of Resonance, working with groups and organisations, and on the other hand, we create funds to solve very particular sorts of problems that have arisen, that we've identified a need for specialist-shaped money for. So why am I here today? Well, you're probably going to hear a few things that are going to start sounding a bit repetitive. On a finance day, it's probably not surprising, but if they are repeated, then it's probably worth bearing them in mind, because they probably are things that we think about quite a lot. So my position, standing kind of between maybe yourselves and investors into your project, would be to try and, for example, represent you the very, very best I can to those investors, whether it might be, say, Triodos, for example, or it might be some other kind of investor into your plan. My job would be to kind of represent you. So I hope that makes sense as to where I might stand. I don't necessarily go and get a trowel out and slap cement on anything in particular, but I'd be quite happy to do so. So what do I look for when I'm working with a group? I've got a kind of like a hit list, really, of things that... no, it's not the groups and it's not the bankers on my hit list, not today. But a hit list of jobs, kind of like milestones that I think a really good proposal represents when it comes across my desk. And I get all shapes and sizes of proposal coming across my desk. So I do think it's worth just sort of saying when I see something, what makes it sort of tick for me, what makes it go, sound really interesting. And first and foremost, we're here to support groups. Okay, so I need to be clear about that. Constituted groups, people with a trading vehicle that can work. And we're here to support those that are making a social impact. That's what we're set up to do. So I look first and foremost at how is this organisation seeking to change the world, starting here in Britain. How's this organisation seeking to change things for the better? And are they able to demonstrate that that would make a difference? Now, you might argue that affordable housing or making housing more affordable is by itself an immediate, so socially impactful that it just kind of crosses all the T's and dots all the I's. Well, that may well be true, but I'm particularly interested in seeing people demonstrate how they're meeting needs in their particular areas. If it's kind of a lifestyle issue, then I guess the impact gets a little lessened for us. but Steve's already kind of outlined how affordability might be matched to incomes, for example, in a particular area, and he's already talked about how homes built in particularly rural areas where there's a heavy constraint on people staying locally, and so you get kind of communities literally sort of bleeding to death as young people leave, and fresh hearts and minds can't actually join that community. Schools die out, and so on and so forth. So for those kinds of situations, I think the social impact can often be very, very clear. So if you have a proposal and you wish to approach an organisation like mine, and there are others, there's a competitive market these days. If you wish to approach a social investment finance intermediary, then demonstrate your impact first and foremost. So what do I look for? The other things, I look for a few sort of tick boxes really to see is the scheme viable. I look for land. And it sounds obvious, doesn't it? But land's quite important. You need to have something that you can build on. But not only can you go out and show me a field and point across a fence at it? Have you got any right to walk on that field yet? Have you got an agreement in place that will say that field or that piece of brownfield, whatever it happens to be, is earmarked for your project? Is there an agreement with that landowner? Again, Steve mentioned local authorities as being significant landowners with whom you might do a deal. But there are others as well. There might be like-minded or mission-connected. Did you like that? Mission-connected. Did you like that one? Yeah. There might be mission-connected landowners who might see what you're trying to do and say, do you know what, I want to do something for my neighbourhood, my community. So there are all sorts of ways of securing land, but you need to have some form of control over being able to buy it. So that's one of the top tick boxes. Not merely saying to me, I'm saying me, but to whoever might be in this sort of position, saying, look, we've seen a plot of waste ground, and it really should have houses on it, and it really should have self-built houses on it. Well, good. I might agree with you. I might really agree with you. And we can agree that over a pint. But actually, when it comes to doing this job, you need to demonstrate to me that you've got the ability to secure control over that land, to deliver what you want to deliver on it. So land. Another one is planning. And of course, Steve's mentioned planning. Now, if you've got the land, you've got some form of ability to control that land. What exactly are you going to put on it? Are you going to put on it something that would not stand a snowball's chance in hell of actually getting any planning permission from the local authority? It's absolutely critical. So it's a really good task or a really good exercise, if you can do it at all, is to speak to the planning department and get some sense of talk to a human being. If you can find one, talk to them rather than merely looking at the local plan policy, because, it's a book, but negotiations are stronger. So have a chat with a planner and see, this is our broad sort of suggestion. What do you think? Is there anything on that piece of land that we ought to watch out for? Are there any potential showstoppers? One of the key things, I guess, for self-build might be, well, are you actually going to finish the project? So that might be something that crops up. So planning, land, control, planning. I've put on my list governance, actually, and it kind of gets overlooked, I think, sometimes, this one. And I want to, when a group approach me, it's kind of interesting, actually. I'll tell you an interesting statistic. Well, it's not a statistic, but I think that's a finding, maybe, of some sort. If you have a website, an organisational website, investors, when they come to your website, the first page they click on after they've kind of landed whatever your homepage is with your sort of beautiful pictures of flowers and lambs and squirrels and kittens, the very next page in houses, the very next place they'll go to is the About Us. They'll go to Who Are You? It's the most quickly clicked on page. So they want to have biographies of you, and they want to see that, ideally with some photos, so it's human, remember, but they want to see that you've done this sort of thing before, or that you really know your onions. So it's really the governance side of it is really important from the point of view of the individuals delivering what you're hoping to deliver, but also, of course, the underlying vehicle underneath, the legal vehicle. So By legal vehicle, of course, I'm talking about the sort of things that, again, Steve has alluded to. Community land trust is not specifically an organisation. It's not specifically a legal vehicle per se. It is a type, and from there you've got things like community benefit societies and co-ops, very, very specifically and commonly. And they're slightly different, but they're governed under the same sorts of legislation. So there are also CICs, which you'll all be very familiar with, whether they're whichever schedule CIC and whether they're able to have wide membership or not. You check it out. It's very easy to find out online from the regulator. So the vehicle that you've got, it could be a company limited by guarantee, but with charitable status, for example. All sorts of things might be there. But I would say, with governance, having the right people in place who know what they're up to with a track record, and also having the right vehicle. So just having the word community in the name of the vehicle is not enough. It doesn't mean that you can always do what you want that thing to do. It's like just getting a car and saying, I want a red one. Well, okay, but what if the red one won't go up hills? So what you need to do is you need to have a vehicle that will do what you want it to do. I'll come back to that in a second when I talk about the, in my mind, a very simplistic kind of overview of what the different types of finance are. So governance, incredibly important. Land planning, governance. Remember I mentioned impact to begin with. Costings, again, you think it's kind of obvious really. How much does a scheme cost to build? Whether you offset some of that as sweat equity or not, that's another entirely different question really. The point is, I really do get proposals coming across my desk where the costings are so on the back of a fag packet that I have nothing to hang my hat on. I've got nothing there. I can't work with it. It's where was the quantity surveyor that looked at this? Or maybe there's someone in your team who's a qualified QS. Well, that's a good start. But where is the third-party validation of these costs? Even if they're early stage, even if they're sort of a bit QS on a pro bono basis. Somebody said, well, we're going to build 13 houses and we think it'll cost about this much. Get that stuff done, rather than sort of thinking with, a couple of mates in a cafe, well, we think it works like this, and Steve said it's £1,400 per square metre. He might be perfectly right, but you can't tell me that you've listened to Steve in the pub. You have to kind of go out and get it verified. So costings, incredibly important. And the costings bring me to the next bit, which is, and it sounds a bit boring, but the business plan. Now, by the business plan, what I kind of mean is not demonstrating the kind of philosophical and theological value of self-build or ecology per se, but actually saying, look, this is going to be the cost, and here is the income, or the other way around. Here's the income, and from that we will deduct the cost. And notice that one is definitely higher than the other. And the business plan really kind of demonstrates then how you can achieve that little margin of income. Doesn't matter, it can be fumes in some cases. In a sense, it's not desperately important to make vast sums in profit or surplus, but definitely having a viable business plan is what counts. So the figures, your costs come up so far, and your incomes come up here. And demonstrating with QSing what those costs are likely to be, and of course your land control, you've got that in place already. Remember, you did that already. And all of those things have come in, and then your income is here. And your income is derived from selling homes or renting them. Okay, so you need to demonstrate. That's what your business plan is really going to do. I'm not going to sort of put up walls of numbers on the board here. I'll leave that to Steve and his forensic mind. But you get the general shapes of what I'm trying to suggest here. So costings with a business plan showing that the income can come in. What I look for as well is I look for some finance already. It's hard to get, of course, but some finance, whether it's genuine cash or whether, as I say, like control over the land, those kind of things all count towards the robustness of your proposal. If you have some cash already that you are investing, then that really is the one that really makes a proposal tick very, very nicely indeed. And so maybe now's the time to talk about the different types of cash. So if you've got cash to invest in your scheme, it may well be what I would class it as equity of some sort. Now, as you're all pretty well familiar, if you buy a house, You put down something called a deposit, and then you kind of borrow the balance or whatever you need to borrow as a mortgage. So that deposit slice is your first piece of equity. So equity money is what you've put in. And in a collective sense, if you've got a scheme of several houses and you want to make that scheme tick for a lender, for example, then it's really critical to show where the rest of the money is coming from that won't be covered by the loan. And that stuff's called the equity. And that equity could come in the form of shares. Community shares, for example, were covered. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Could come in the form of shares, could come in the form of money that your group has collected together, could come in the form of who knows, a philanthropic investor of some sort would come alongside you, or possibly grants. What? Or possibly grants, okay? Sorry, I have to do that slightly Gallic shrug. Wasn't very Gallic, actually. But anyway, it's a shrug, because I don't know where those things tend to come from at the moment. But good luck if you've got a stream of grant money. But those kind of things make up that equity piece. So seeing that in the game is really useful for making a proposal come alive. Yes?
Can you give us some kind of clue what percentage of project costs you're looking for when it comes to you in existing equity?
I think it's really important that certain key jobs are covered by it. So do you remember all that stuff that Steve was outlining, which is the pre-development costs? Things like site surveys, planning, all of those things. Cost of the land as well would be an excellent one if it can be managed. All of those things, I think, whatever that sum amounts to, that would probably be a really, really key one, because what you're doing is you're risking your own money to prove the viability of it. That would be really, really important. And Mark's going to come up next and talk more specifically about how their loans are constructed, and he will give you a sense of what loan to cost or loan to value might look like. But usually there's a percentage involved there as well. But we can come to that later. I'm sure Mark will outline those carefully for you. And then finally, I put on my list customers. It might sound a bit obvious, and sorry to use the word customers in a way, but customers to me are people who actually pay for the service you're about to provide. And of course, it sounds kind of obvious that you've got homeowners or self-builders involved here, but are they able to buy the product that you collectively are making? So have you ensured that there are retail mortgages available, if that's required? Are you sure that they can afford the rents that are required? Are you sure that there's a pool of people slightly larger than the one you need, so that if there are dropouts, they can quickly be replaced? Because for all best will in the world, people will drop out of a scheme, of course. So do you have customers? I don't just mean a head count of people who showed up at the cafe. I really mean people who can genuinely pay for the product that you're proposing. So that's my very short list. It's the impact of what you're doing. Have a really good think about that. Really analyse that, because it can feel natural, because it's something you just talk about regularly. But really understand what the social impact is of what you're doing. Land, have some form of control over the land. Planning, get a really clear sense of planning, even before you start drawing up a planning application. Governance, make sure you've covered off that. Look, be strong, be a strong organisation. Costings with it, the business plan, so income and expenditure and how you propose to complete these tasks. Have them verified. Some finance already that you can bring to the party, and of course customers who are viable customers. Now there's some people I didn't mention, and there are probably one or two in the room, and they're called architects. And what I propose, and what I see quite often, so I'm going to propose it now, is that you keep your architects at a bit of an arm's length during the process and involve them as the process develops. The reason for this, I do see quite a few schemes come my way which look absolutely beautiful and very wonderful in architectural terms, but completely unaffordable by the time people are trying to raise money against them or for those projects. So what I would say is use your architects very carefully so that they can assist you with some of those outline planning questions, just kind of scoping the land, what sizes of units can you do there. Do really light touch stuff there before you get it tucked into the really exciting stuff of, you know, how's this curlicue going to contribute to this mansard roof? I don't know. But anyway, so avoid glass walls if possible for this. Architects, probably you really need to keep control of them so that you can understand the costings principally as you go through. Now, some architects are absolutely excellent at doing this, so you know, I'm not tiring everyone with the same brush. What I'm saying is keep your architects close and your friends closer, or the enemies. So I'll go back to those types of finance just ever so quickly, just the broad categories of them. The equity and the debt or the loan finance. So equity, as I explained, can be raised in a number of different ways. Some of it is grant. Some of it is money that you, as a group, might be able to introduce to it, some of your own private money, for example. And some of it is something which we've mentioned called community shares. Now, community shares, I'll quickly touch on this and what they are. They're probably a bit of a misnomer in some ways, because they're not shares in the sense that they are kind of tradable items on the open market. What they are is they're actually a membership. So you become a membership of a membership organisation such as a co-op or a community benefit society, and your membership, the amount that you bought into that organisation on an annual basis can return an interest payment back to you as a member. You're kind of a member investor. One member, one vote, doesn't matter how much money goes in, those sorts of things. That's a really good way to raise equity into your vehicle. And I think it really is worth trying. Resonance, am I running out of time? You've stood up. That means I'm running out of time.
Yeah, so we got a bit of time, a couple of questions.
Okay, all right. So Resonance, we created a couple of funds to try and assist and work with this problem. As I said right at the beginning, not only are we working with groups, but trying to create some finance solutions that sort of work and meet these very special requirements that are out there. One's our Community Shares Underwriting Fund. So what this will do is match pound for pound community shares that an organisation raises as a loaned pound, if you like. And so what it enables you to do is say, well, we need, easy numbers, Jari, we need 2 million quid to get this project up and running. And so what we propose is we're going to raise £1 million in community shares, and we're going to go to the Community Share Underwriting Fund for the match of that, because you know you need around 2 million to actually get the you need around £1 million to get the thing up off the ground and demonstrate to your investors that you've got a viable and sensible proposal. So we then front you that money, saying we know you're going to raise the other half, pound for pound. Here's that money, get on with it, build the bit that you need to do, and carry on drawing in the investment from your retail, your members, your growing membership, vastly growing membership, now raising £1 million. That's a community share underwriting fund. So we can work with proposals and support them in that way. Of course, you want to refinance that later. You want to do more shares in a couple of years' time to buy that loan out. You don't want that loan sitting on your book too long. Where else was I going? Oh yes, the Affordable Homes for Rent Fund. That's another vehicle that we put together, and Steve's been heavily involved in over the years. So I take my hat off to him for the work that's gone into it. But what this does is it offers a loan which banks and building societies probably wouldn't approve, because it accepts new organisations. It accepts a much lower debt service cover ratio than a traditional lender might wish to see. And it really is there to try and help a housing venture get up onto its feet for 5 to 7 years before it goes out and refinances that, and then with sort of mainstream ethical lenders. It works like a progression ladder to get you up into those kinds of parameters and shapes where your proposal has got track record and it's able to pay down capital, it's shown that it's working, and it's got a different debt service cover ratio by about that point as well. So that's a very specific product there. So there's two things to think about if you did want to pick up the phone and talk to me at some time, or drop me an email at Resonance, and that is Community Shares Underwriting Fund and the Affordable Homes for Rent Fund. Now, it says Affordable Homes for Rent on the tin, and that's fine. You need to have a think about what your proposal is, whether it includes any rent, but it comes in two tranches, that of construction finance and then the holding finance. Okay? So construction finance, build the thing, and then when it's built, your finance changes at that point because the risk profile has dramatically altered, as Steve outlined. So at this point, you either are selling properties and paying that construction loan off very, very quickly, or you're holding them and renting them. And then you are changing that finance profile to a longer 25-year sort of profile. So affordable homes for rent can really help you to build homes even if they're not purely for rent. I'm going to stop there before Jackson throws something at me.